We're going to turn from North Korea to discussion of the South Korean economy now. We're very pleased that Councillor Lee he is with us here from the South Korean Embassy. We will have him make his presentation first. We'll invite some comments from the other panelists, and then following our pattern, we will open it up for discussion. For those of you who have just joined us, let me remind you of what happens. We'll have this panel. Again, then we'll have a short break. We'll have some catered Korean food from a local restaurant brought in, and then we'll screen the documentary Soul Train following the food. So welcome again to Councillor Lee from the Embassy, and we'll turn the time over to him.
Thank you for arranging this wonderful seminar. In the first panel, we discussed about a little bit gloomy picture of Korean Peninsula, mostly northern part of Korean Peninsula, but my talk will focus on southern part and brighter side of the Korean Peninsula. My talk will be composed of two parts. First of all, first part is about the Korean economy in general, and second part is about the Korea-US economic relations in the past and in the future. And actually, I've been in Washington, D.C. for 7 months now, and this is my first time to BYU, and it's also a first time to Provo City and Utah State, and I'm very delighted to be here. Okay, I'll talk about first part of my presentation this afternoon. I was surprised to find out that half of the audience this afternoon have already gone to Korea before, and probably those people who already experienced Korea might have known a lot of Korean knowledge, not only about Korean, North Korean, South Korean relationship, but also Korean economy in general. And so my first part is a general description of the Korean economy, so it might be a little bit of an update to your knowledge about Korean economy. As you can see on the screen, as you know, Korea's size is as big as small as Virginia, and I understand that Utah State is about 2-3 times bigger than Virginia, I guess. So South Korea is about 1/3 or half size of Utah State, and population is very, very large, 48 million people. We have about 22 million people in the north, and I understand the Utah State has about 22 million people.
About 2.2.
2.2?
Yeah, 2 million.
Okay, so we have a very high density of population Korean in South Korea, and we have neighbors around Korea. In the north we have China, and in the south, separated by the ocean, Japan, and 3 countries. However, they are living adjacent to each other. Do not necessarily have good relationship in the past. Recently, because of the past or historical bitterness, the relationship between 3 countries have gone sour further. And Korea has had strong ties with United States for the past 50 or 55 years. And Korean economy is probably one of the rarest example of big success. Before 1960s, after the World War II and Korean War, Korea's per capita income was less than $100, and Korea was a poorest country and agrarian society. And from 1962, when we started the first economic development planning, up until 1990s, Korea made one of the fastest developing record in the world, about more than 10% annually. And nowadays, it became one of the middle-income country and fastest industrializing country in the world. And as of 2005, the per capita income of South Korea reached to the level of 16,000 US dollars. And the current status of Korean economy is, as you can see on the screen. Economic position is, in terms of GDP, it is about, as of last year, about 700 billion US dollars, which is about 11th standing in the world. And in terms of export, it is 12th, and import size is about 13th. And as you can see, export amount is about 285 billion US dollars, and import is about 260 billion dollars. And as you all know, a major product of Korea is automobiles like Hyundai, and dynamic random access memory chips, and the liquefied crystal display screens of computers, and ships and steel. And major economic indicators last year was 4% of economic growth and 2.7% inflation rate. And we had 17 billion current surplus, and unemployment rate is as low as 3.7%. And we have a goal by the end of 2008 to reach the per capita income of 20,000 US dollars. And here is, Korea has a couple of number ones in the world. As I said, ship is one of the major industry in Korea. It is number one shipbuilder in the world, followed by Japan. And it is also number one DRAM maker. And LCD is also number one. And electronics like LG and Samsung stands at 4th place in the world. And steel, as you know, POSCO steel and such, produces 5th largest amount of product in the world. And automobile is standing at the 6th after France. And such economic progress, it was not always without failures or turmoil. In the middle of 1990s, especially late 1996 and 1997, first Asian financial crisis broke out in Thailand, and the financial crisis was very contagious, and in a couple of months the disease moved to South Korea too, and liquidity was fastly drained out of Korean economy. And Korean investors, foreign investors, pulled back their money out of Korean economy, and small and medium-sized enterprises, but also large companies also went almost bankrupt. And of course, the superficial reason was drain of the liquidity, but the root cause, we believe, lied in the methodology of our economic expansion. Mostly Korean enterprises, especially large conglomerates, focused on quantitative economic activities rather than focusing on qualitative, profitable activities. And that's why foreign investors lost confidence in the health of Korean business. So they decided to pull the money back, as was the case in Thailand, Indonesia, and other countries too. But Korean people and Korean business people all took that crisis into opportunity, and we pulled together and started from scratch almost. And after the crisis for 5 or 6 years, we made substantial progress to restructure the economic structure. And in the process, not only individual person of Korean population made his or her own efforts. For example, as you can remember, at the outbreak of the financial crisis, housewives were lining up in front of the financial institutions to sell their wedding rings and family treasures to contribute to expand the country's liquidity, to clear foreign debt liabilities. Those individual efforts were greatly contributing to the overcome of the crisis, but also the entrepreneurs made efforts too. They began to focus their core business into more profitable and more promising areas. And the government also made utmost efforts to reform the whole economic structure. They introduced international standard of corporate governance, and introduced new regulations and rules for banking sectors. So individuals and business sectors and government sector all made their own efforts to contribute to the successful restructuring of the whole process. And after 5 years, up until to the crisis, Korean economy was like a semi state-driven half-market economy. Of course, this is not a very academical term. I made this term. And after the crisis and restructuring process, we became sort of a full-blown market economy. Of course, we are not in the final destination. We have to go some more. And in the future, we have to create some more business-friendly environment in Korea. And also, we have to increase productivity. And as foreign investors criticize harshly on this fact, which is labor market situation has to be improved more, and all those things we are doing right now. And as you all know, Korean economy has reached this stage through export-driven trading policy, and external trade is the core locomotive of Korean economy. And in case of U.S., foreign trade sector is about only 20%, but in case of Korea, it amounts to up to more than 70% of GDP. And Korea has to pursue and will be pursuing open trade and regional and global trading policy in the future. And we're doing that in the current negotiation of DDA, and also in the framework of APEC, together with other major trading partners with EU and USA. And up until now, bilateral FTAs, free trade agreements, are not being rigorously pursued so far. Up until now, we have only 3 FTAs. And we are sort of a latecomer in this arena. And we have 3 FTAs with Chile, Singapore, and EFTA. EFTA is a European Free Trade Agreement, free trade area, which has members like Switzerland and small countries, Switzerland and Liechtenstein, countries like that. And we have a bold plan to conclude FTAs with major trading partners. At the same time, we are planning to have about 10 or 12 FTAs by the end of, this is wrong, by the end of 2008. We are almost finishing negotiation with ASEAN countries. And we are doing that because FTA is expected to expand in great amount the trade in goods and services. And also we are pursuing open market economy, and FTA will bring Korea's economic system up to a very international level. So far, I have talked about Korean economy in general, and from now I will focus on bilateral economic relationship with the United States. As I mentioned, we have had relationship for the last 55 years after the war, and U.S. provided Korea with 4 things. 4 essential things: security, first of all, and capital with which we can develop our economy, and also technology is essential, and of course, huge market, huge USA market. These 4 things are essential for Korea, not only for Korean economy, but also Korean security. As of last year, bilateral trade volume was about 75 billion US dollars. Actually, we are exporting more than we are importing. We have about 10 billion US dollar trading surplus with USA. And but Korea is also a large trading partner for USA too. Korea is the 2nd largest export market for USA. And as far as agricultural products are concerned, Korea is 5th largest market. And Korea's major, this is important fact. You know, compared to European countries combined, Korea imports more than most of European countries do. And Korea's major import item, of course, includes aircraft, computer chip, and heavy equipment, machines, and agricultural products, including beef. Of course, currently, after the outbreak of the BSE case 2 years ago, the beef imports has been temporarily pending situation, but we are going to resume the import sooner than later. And Korea's major export, as I mentioned, mobile phone, automobiles, and microchips. And this is the trading export of the bilateral relationship. But our economic cooperation also covers FDI features too, foreign direct investment. U.S. is the #1 investor in Korea. The accumulative investment amounts to 30 billion US dollars as of last year. And Korea is becoming more and more important investor in the USA too. For example, Hyundai Motor Company has a plant in Montgomery, Alabama, and it's producing 400,000 units a year, which means about 1,000 cars every day. And Samsung Electronics DRAM mega plant is in Austin, Texas, which is employing more than 2,000 US employees. And Hynix Semiconductor. Hynix is a Hyundai electronic company. It has a semiconductor company in Oregon State. This summarizes, roughly summarizes the 50-year history of Korea-U.S. economic relationship. Of course, in the 50s and 60s, after the war, U.S. Korea economic relationship was like a one-sided economic assistance period. We were receiving a lot of U.S. grant aid in terms of kind assistance, like wheat flours and such, and also in cash too. In the 60s and 70s, from 50s until mid 70s, we have been receiving about 10-15 billion dollars worth of kind and cash economic assistance from the USA. And in the 60s, when we started to have economic development planning in 1962, up until late 1970s, U.S. provided Korea with a huge market for Korea to export labor-intensive products like footwears and headgears and also textiles and apparels. And from 80s up until mid-1990s, we cannot tell that Korea was one of the major competitors of the U.S. economy, but there was we had kind of division of labor. We were exporting labor-intensive products like textiles and apparels and other such products to USA, and we're importing capital-intensive products from USA. But things changed a lot after year 2000, and we are exporting also capital-intensive products like IT products and such. So we have kind of intra-industrial competition situation now. And this is the rough description for the future direction of our cooperation. And we have had security alliance for the past 55 years. And last year, when APEC summit was taking place in Busan, President Roh Moo-hyun and President Bush had a meeting, the adjacent city of Kyong-yul, bilateral summit meeting, and they agreed to have develop the security alliance relationship into more comprehensive partnership relationship between our two countries to include not only security but also economic and cultural and people-to-people contacts. And in that context, we are strengthening economic cooperation, and for that we are planning to have some more comprehensive economic framework, which is called US-Korea Free Trade Agreement, which covers everything from elimination of the tariff and non-tariff barriers, and also covers the free investment and everything, everything productive for both countries. And also we are pursuing visa waiver program. USA has about 20 countries for which for those countries, people don't have to get visas to enter USA, and Korea is not one of them so far, and we are planning to be one of the members of the program in the near future, so that two peoples get more mutual understanding and to get closer to each other. And let me elaborate more on the Korea-US Free Trade Agreement. It was early last month that we officially announced the launch of the negotiation on the Capitol Hill. It was February the 2nd, and two trade ministers were speaking there in the presence of major Congress people like Senator Grassley and Senator Baucus and Senator Jim Colby. About 10 Congress people from Senate and the House were present there to express their strong support for this initiative. And about a couple of weeks ago, Korean President Roh Moo-hyun at the press conference expressed that this bilateral FTA is on top of his priority agenda for the remainder of his tenure until next year. And the timeline for the negotiation is roughly fixed. Excuse me. And the first round of negotiation will be taking place in Washington, D.C. from June 5th to 9th. And second negotiation will be in Seoul the following month. And we have kind of limitation here because the current Bush administration's Trade Promotion Authority, which was delegated from the Congress to the administration, expires at the end of June next year. Which means that if we have to utilize this fast-track tool, we have to conclude the negotiation by the end of March next year, because it has to give Congress at least 90 days before the start of the ratification process. So being mindful of that time frame, we are planning to expedite the whole process. And hopefully we try to conclude the negotiation by the end of this year. And why we're doing this? We have strong conviction that this bilateral FTA will bring a lot of benefits and economic benefits to both countries. Of course, it is not only for Korea but also for USA, and we think it will pave a new cooperative partnership and comprehensive friendship for the future. And as I explained before, the meaning of FTA for Korea is not only upgrade of overall trade and investment, but also a solid foundation for a comprehensive and future-oriented bilateral relationship. And we have some study results. In the U.S., the Congressional Trade Committee, which is called International Trade Commission, about 4 or 5 years ago, produced an analysis that if two countries had bilateral trade agreements, U.S. exports to Korea would increase more than 50%. And in terms of agricultural exports, it will increase more than 200%. And U.S. GDP might expand by 0.2%. And Korea has also study results. As early as this year, January, Korean Economic Institute called KIEP produced a study result, and according to it, the bilateral FTA will increase Korea's GDP by 2%, and about 100,000 people have new jobs, and U.S. direct investment inflows will go up by 9.6 billion US dollars. So this preliminary analysis tells us that two countries will be benefited both by this bilateral trade agreement. And my conclusion now is that Korean economy has been expanding for the past 50 years through the policy of export orienting and also export focusing strategy. And we will maintain the same path. And for Korea and U.S. economic relationship, we have had strong ties, and we're building new infrastructure for the next 50 years, and that is called FTA. So I cover two parts, first Korean economy and then bilateral economic relationship. And I'll stop here, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain them. Thank you.